We've all been there. Your buddy just got a new car with a bazillion-inch touchscreen, and now you've got to be like, sweet. All the while knowing you got to look at this thing. Yeah, we may not need a huge touchscreen to be happy, but it couldn't hurt. So let's go from this to this and decide if we really should. Upgrading your stereo has been covered a lot over the years, and even my old video still gives you what you need to know. But there's another newer and arguably better way of doing things called Android. So what's the deal there? Let's get this out of the way first. You've likely heard of Android Auto and Apple Carplay. These aren't what we're talking about. They're actually just methods that allow you to connect your phone in such a way that its processing power is used to run applications catered for use in a car, while your stereo serves as an interactive remote display. It's brilliant. An Android stereo, though, uses the Android operating system, just as your tablet or phone does. And the real attraction here is its open source software, meaning 100% free. So, while a typical stereo from a major brand will have its own custom operating system that you're paying for, an Android model can be significantly cheaper since the R&D just isn't comparable. Kind of intriguing then, and better yet, you also gain access to all the familiar apps your phone has, meaning you can watch the GT6R build here on YouTube, or even run an OBD2 monitoring app like Torque. Just make sure you choose a model that has the Google Play Store installed though, otherwise you're going to be sorely disappointed. Anyway, perhaps the most useful feature some models offer is support for CarPlay and Android Auto. Which sounds confusing, as I just explained why the Android OS is so great on its own, but this is actually awesome, as it allows us to access premium features that have had gobs of effort put into them by people and companies who know what the heck they're doing. So really then, we get the best of both worlds. How do we put it in our car? Thankfully, stereos continue to be available in two basic configurations, known as single or double DIN, and there's an array of different screens and layout within these two options. But no matter what you choose, you're more than likely to be dealing with a universal fit that requires wiring and maybe even some plastic trim to fit your dash. That's just how it works. Or rather worked. Because something really cool is a few manufacturers are finally creating purpose-built solutions, and that's what we're going to explore right now. This is the Seicane H2023 N-P. Catchy. You'll notice it has a bezel which sort of matches the original one from my WRX, which means it should kind of look factory-ish. Plus, it comes with a pre-made wiring harness to plug directly into the car, so in theory at least, the hardest part will be getting the old radio out because this thing should just slide straight in. We'll move through this, but no matter what you drive, the interior trim will likely come out with a few careful tugs and a Phillips screwdriver. Just do yourself a favor and check out some videos of your own car before you begin, because they're all different. And before even getting this far, it's advisable to pull the negative lead off the battery. Or, you know, don't. Honestly, the risk is low, but if you're not familiar with automotive wiring, just take a 10mm wrench and 15 seconds to play it safe. Don't be me. Regardless, with a few plugs removed and the radio pulled free, that really is the hardest part over. So to install the new unit, we'll first swap over these vents from the old bezel plus some retaining clips, both of which just snap in place, and you'll notice there's a few sockets to consider next. Starting with two USB ports, a main fused power connection, accessory plugs for RCA cables among other features, threaded GPS and Wi-Fi connections, and lastly, a spot for the radio antenna. Now, because we don't have to wire up our own power harness for once, Seicane has included a choice of 3 different options, all made of pretty reasonable materials, and this one did fit the plug in my car, but only the one plug. This other one was for the auxiliary ports and the armrest, which won't work now, but that's not exactly the end of the world, and this smaller one was to ground the radio case, which will be addressed shortly. I did end up throwing in the GPS antenna, but it turns out it's only used for the built-in navigation, and I'll mostly be using CarPlay, which the phone takes care of. But speaking of CarPlay, let's also plug in a USB extension so we can actually take advantage of that feature. While the new stereo doesn't require any of the original screws to retain it, this one will go back in to provide a new ground through the metal structure of the dash. And with that, just plug in the radio antenna and main power supply, and lightly place the unit in the dash long enough to turn the key and see if we've got life. which we do. Awesome, that seriously took about 10 minutes. It's worth mentioning at this point that my car is quite dumb, for lack of a better term. The climate controls and heated seats are all separate modules, but in many cars of recent years, they may be built into the center stack. If you find yourself in that category, there are still a lot of options that can integrate back into your system, though it is going to mean more plugs and part swapping, plus it seems the manufacturer's instructions aren't necessarily going to walk you through it all, so you'll need to do a bit of thinking. The initial boot takes the longest, but it's nearly instant going forward. And now that it's done, let's get some programming taken care of, starting with the steering wheel buttons. Normally, stereos like this require a decoder box to interpret the buttons into something it can actually understand. But thankfully, Android models don't seem to need this, which saves a few bucks and also means we can easily program however we'd like. For instance, I'm using the Mode button to return to the home screen on a short press and turn the screen off with a long press. Just hit a button and select its function from the menu. Easy. The screen dims when the headlights are switched on, and the touch buttons illuminate at the same time as you'd expect, but interestingly, both are actually adjustable, as you can see here and here. Time and date should sync automatically if you connect over Wi-Fi, but it only took a couple of minutes to punch it in manually. And lastly, Bluetooth is as simple as locating CarKit in your phone's connections, and when prompted, entering the default pin 0000. Once paired up, the Z-Link app will boot into Carplay. Yeah, Carplay's wireless on this. I mean, you could plug it in, but... Just as we've come to expect nowadays, leave your phone in your pocket and it will automatically connect, usually within about 20 seconds of turning the ignition on. And while it has failed occasionally, cycling the key again brought it back for me. Certainly annoying, but not the end of the world. I've listed some definite pros for the Android operating system, but here's my biggest positive for using Carplay. Everything just works. Press the voice button, you get Siri. Go to Spotify, you pick up where you left off. Yes, there's a bit of lag, but it's totally manageable, and we haven't even mentioned Google Maps yet. I know I'm an oddball here, but I'm used to it. I don't have a data plan, which can make using services offline slightly annoying. In case you didn't realize though, Google has a feature where you can save maps for offline use. Just search for a city, scroll over and choose download. Zoom out and repeat to cover more area. It's not just the road network you're saving either. You can search and navigate to stores, and everything works almost as well as when you're online, but without live traffic updates. Similarly, Spotify will revert to playing from your downloaded music, so there's no issue there. And perhaps the most surprising feature I've found with offline CarPlay is I can still use Siri to a degree. Text Dad.
What would you like me to say?
Is the GT6 done yet?
Laugh out loud, good one, Michael.
If you don't use an iPhone, you'll still get the same kind of benefits through Android Auto, though my old phone only supports a wired connection. It does look like wireless is an option, but just haven't been able to test that. We've covered a lot of cool features so far, but keep in mind, Android needs decent hardware to run all this smoothly. So the general rule of thumb is to get at least a quad-core processor and 2 gigs of RAM, but this has twice that. As I figured if it's still slow, that will be more insightful for you than just assuming a better version will perform better. I'd say this is totally usable, but bear in mind, the higher specs you get, the more you're going to spend. What I'm not so sure about is whether or not a lower spec version will perform roughly the same while using CarPlay. I mean, your phone's technically doing the brunt work, but the head unit still needs to run the Z-Link app. Maybe those of you who have an answer can chime in below. Honestly, a more concerning drawback in my eyes is reliability. This Alpine has been in our Forester for about 2 years now, and I can count on one hand how many times it didn't connect over Bluetooth. Really, it just works, and that seems to be a general consensus of users, and is a large reason for why we bought it. You don't have to look far, however, to find reviews of Android units that complain about overheating, constant rebooting, dropped calls, random actions happening without consent, and outright premature failure. So the key is finding a brand who says they stand behind their products, and is actually recognized to do so. When Seicane reached out then, it sounded like a good opportunity to gather some information. And even though we're not going to be able to speak to the long-term reliability today, keep an eye on the pinned comment below, as we'll use it to keep a record. After playing around with things for a while, let's start our conclusion by recognizing that the Alpine is a mid to high tier quality unit that's still a universal fit and required a steering wheel control interface plus a fairly pricey bezel. Whereas the Seicane is just under half the price and literally plugged straight in, has a 2-inch larger HD screen, wireless CarPlay, and far more expandability and adjustability. In terms of build construction, this looks factory, cause it is. Subaru mostly used aftermarket double-din touchscreens in this era, and this is the factory bezel, so it fits as you'd expect. My car didn't come with a double-din though, so this simply replaces the entire area, and quite honestly, other than how it sticks out an inch, it looks pretty good in here, if not on the large side. I went to change the clock in here to daylight savings time recently and noticed it doesn't have that option, contrasted by the Android, which can be set to your exact time zone. Even something as simple as a delayed power off, which when you've reached your destination gives you the chance to shut the car down and put the key back in the accessory position before ending your call or favorite tune. I'm not an audiophile, just putting that out there. I do occasionally play a couple of instruments though, and listen to enough music that I have some idea of what I like when it comes to quality. And while this brand may be a leader in the audio world, in basically the same cars, listening to the same music and playing around with the EQ for ages, I cannot get the same depth and width of sound out of it as I can from the Android. Color me confused. It's not likely to be an amperage thing as they both have the same peak outputs, so I tried to get some waveform data through an app to show you the difference, but I don't think it's terribly helpful. So just take my word for it and know that I'm as baffled as you are.
Let's not ignore a few annoying things though.
When you adjust the volume, an indicator comes up on the screen, which prevents you from making any further changes until it's gone. Please get rid of this. The volume adjustment is also crazy sensitive. 3 to 4 is about the same as 12 to 14 on the original radio. Why? There's also some noise when connected to Bluetooth and the volume is on, but nothing's playing. And although you can't really hear it while music is playing or the engine's running, it's still there and doesn't exude quality. Questions still in the air if a subwoofer would amplify this problem, but I guess we'll find out later. Ultimately, there's a lot of features and points we could go into more, but I think this hits most of what you need to know. Do with it what you want. I hope it helps. If you're interested in a radio like this one, it's linked below. Thanks for watching. YWRX will be the center of a bunch more videos like this in time, but our primary focus is still the GT6R build, a 400 horsepower modernized take of a classic piece of British motor heritage. So for more of everything, consider subscribing and asking some friends too as well. Special thanks to all our amazing supporters, of which we couldn't do this without, and if you'd like to help too, it's all linked below. Take care. We'll catch you next time.